Hello,
Hello?
okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anareta Bashaliva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, and literary workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any question for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Dr. Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким покліном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you, Katerina. Today's guest will be introduced by Dr. Victor Fett.
Thank you, Anara. It is my pleasure to welcome Daria Nebesh, who is presenting on Ukrainian ethnic music. Daria Lassowsky Nebesh, music educator, flutist, and trained ethnomusicologist, was born in New York City to Second World War refugees from Ukraine. Her parents raised her to be bilingual and bicultural. She maintained her advanced fluency of the Ukrainian language, and her dissertation focused on the preservation and maintenance of Ukrainian identity in the diaspora. Currently, she is professionally a music educator in a public school system, and she continues to be active in the Ukrainian-American diaspora. Please, Darka, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. Vitayu. A little bit before I get into everything about myself, as was mentioned, I'm currently an orchestra teacher for elementary school students in the local public school system. However, I still consider myself a social participant of Ukrainian musical culture by preserving, progressing, and promoting the culture of my ancestors, which still very much feels not only of my ancestors, but of myself, even though I'm a trained ethnomusicologist and one could say objective scholar. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. And I participate weekly currently as a cantor in my Ukrainian Catholic parish in providing the responses, sung responses in a Byzantine liturgy. But that said, I'll continue on. So many of you know, especially those of you that are well versed in Ukrainian culture and history, we are not Russia, nor is Russia Ukraine. I think it's fair to say it both ways. They deserve to have their own history, their own culture, and we deserve to have ours as well. I do like to say that anytime I do give a presentation, just in case someone new is listening or happens to fall upon us and hear it, it's good to continue explaining it. I've been doing it all my life. A little sadness there's a lot of great sadness with the war that happened to start on my birthday on February 24th, 5 years ago. Oh, it's 26, yes. And before that, growing up as a first-generation Ukrainian-American, I had to explain often to people what my heritage is, what I speak at home. So I don't think we should ever stop explaining, and that's how we continue to preserve and progress. Just in case also someone's out there wondering why we have confusion outside of Ukraine of who we are, it's the political borders versus cultural identity, distinct nationality versus a unique ethnicity, Muscovite Russian history versus Kiev and Rus. We are still fighting that very often in information, that these are two distinctly different paths, and that Ukraine was Kiev and Rus, and that Russia is not Rus. Much confusion, as we know. And there's much cultural appropriation used by the Russians in order to basically claim our rich soil and steal resources from Ukraine. And that's the only reason I can see why would you want to get rid of your neighbors, because you covet what they have. And these attacks, unfortunately, are not unique in this modern day. It's been a history of ours that we've been growing up with. And I often, you can see me saying ours, theirs. I still very much feel both Ukrainian and American. So I still straddle those two parts of myself. I'm not going to get too much into it because I'm here to talk about music, but we can carefully trace roots to various nomadic tribes that first lived on the lands, and discuss all the various historical encounters and battles. I'm sure it's been discussed on these podcasts before, but I'm going to end with one simple fact about identity. A Ukrainian cannot be on the Russian bone marrow transplant list, and vice versa. Our genetic makeups are incompatible biologically. So that's kind of an easy way to shut that down. Just recently, my daughter actually had issues, my youngest, on a social media post. She was correcting somebody about who somebody was in Ukrainian history, and a troll got on there, and it was a public post or a public thread, and he said, "What? We're the same thing. We're one and the same." And here we go again. So we're still fighting it on a daily basis. But I am here to give a broad and brief overview of over millennia of music. Let's start with something. I'm not going to play the whole thing, and I'll explain in a moment why. But this should be a familiar tune to many. So a little bit about Shtedrik, because it has been, in my personal opinion, very much overplayed since Ukraine has made it onto the global stage of being identified, or much more than previous. So what you have just heard here was the original version of an ancient tune that Mykola Lysenko took, and it was also arranged for chorus, for choral singing, Western choral singing. This is a very ancient tune. And then later this was arranged in, I believe, the late 19th century. And then in the early 20th century, a Ukrainian-American composer wanted to introduce it to his adopted homeland and audiences, and he rewrote the words as Carol of the Bells. So people think of this as a Ukrainian Christmas carol. And in all honesty, it has nothing to do with Christmas. It is a New Year's Eve or New Year's Day song. It is ancient, actually pre-Christian meaning of Shtedrik, flying in like a bird. So the new year, flying in like a bird, actually was sung also very often in the springtime, but then later turned into, of course, New Year's Day. But greeting the new year, and that and hopes and wishes for a prosperous new year and a good harvest, and so on and so forth. And no mention of any birth of Christ or Christmas or any such thing at all. So, and to be honest, I do have a personal love for it at times. It is a pretty lovely tune, and ancient as it is, but the overplaying of it, you will often hear me skipping it if I'm sitting alone at home, but that's beside the point. But Shtedrik, this is the one that's known, and something that's very interesting about it is its extreme popularity, not only outside of Ukraine, thanks to it I mean, we can't poo-poo it completely that Carol of the Bells did give exposure to Ukrainian sound and culture. It is still very popular in Ukraine. It's still very beloved. It is often asked to be sung at Christmas time, as things can get mixed up a little bit and when it's come, because it is so close, Christmas and New Year's. So what's fascinating about it is it's an example of one of our 8 oldest sounds. Ancient, perhaps BC, but definitely AD of the tribes before we became a Christian nation in the 10th century. So, and the sound is pretty much the same. You hear an arrangement here of multiple voices, but the da 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 dee, da da da, that melody is one of our most ancient melodies that we have. So we're going to hear examples of a lot of traditional music. Some people call it folk music. Some people call it ethnic music. I don't have any preferences, never did as a scholar or as a person. I am fine with all of it. We'll hear a few of art music that does tie into it. So in the Western art tradition, a little bit of liturgical, which also ties into the idea of the traditional. And you'll hear a very interesting connection at the very end with our popular music, or often called estradna. So we'll start with the traditional. It can be grouped, if we want to just basically, to vocal and instrumental. They vary regionally throughout Ukraine. And even though we have distinct sounds in the mountains and distinct sounds in the steppes and in the east, Ukrainian will very easily flow in between all of these sounds and changes and differences and claim them as their own. And not think of it as, oh, that's only, I mean, one could equate it to American barbecue, even though there's Memphis barbecue, there's Texas barbecue, there's Kansas barbecue, there's Carolina barbecue, but Americans very much will say, oh yeah, barbecue. They recognize what barbecue is, they can enjoy it, and anybody can prepare it, but it's that different style of. So I think that's the easiest way to compare it. General description of our traditional Ukrainian music. Up into the 18th century, it was strictly an oral tradition. There was no notation written down. In other countries of Europe and even beyond, in Asia and other continents, notation came a little earlier for traditional music, but not so much in Ukrainian. Scholars discovered that it didn't really start getting written down until about the 18th century. Probably because Ukraine, as we know, has a difficult history with not having any geographic borders that help maintain its independence. So there's always coming someone from the east or the west or the south. And the constant battle to keep your independence and sovereignty, the first thing to come to mind is not to write down things. There were more important things in the matters. We do have a myriad of musical styles that have influences from all the visitors, shall we say. Some might say invaders, some might say oppressors, but it can be all of those things that were traveling through Ukraine. A very quick example, which we'll hear, but we do have a type of a Ukrainian bagpipe. And scholars have traced it absolutely that it did come from visiting Celts. They did make it that far and farther, actually. So they were from there, and that got incorporated. They came, they met, it got incorporated into the local style and made its own. This also happens if you study the Ukrainian Byzantine iconography. You can see from one icon to another both Western and Eastern mixes in styling of painting. So this is something that is just generally common in our culture, that we find something, we make it our own and bring it in. Our earliest examples can be compared, scholars have compared it to Greek premodal music, so ancient Greek music. So maybe someone could say we're maybe the closest of some of our sounds. That may be because we do not have any recordings, obviously, of ancient Greek music, nor was it the way it was written down. It's been hard to translate into sound. And so this is some scholars have done studies on this, that they have traced it in this manner. The texts of our ritual songs. So we're talking about songs for various holidays throughout the year or cycle ritual, harvest songs, spring songs, summer holidays, both pre-Christian and Christian, have remained mostly unchanged for centuries. So one can easily trace our mind frame, our ethnic mind frame of our culture throughout these texts that we have. Our vocal can be split into ensemble and solo singing, as I guess everybody could, but I think both are equally represented in repertoire, mostly a cappella. Very rich in harmonies and a cappella singing or solo singing, polyphonic. The female vocal style, people will recognize, some call it Bili Holos, which is a white voice, if you translate it directly. But it basically is just chest voice or a head voice that imitates, which there are days I can do it. Today, I'll be honest, I have a cold, so I can't give a proper example, and harmonized very richly. The males historically have a richer solo repertoire, and I'll discuss that a little more. Of course, it's connected to the Kobzar tradition. And the mountain region has a smaller and simpler vocal repertoire, but their instrumental repertoire is richer and more complex than the northern, central, and eastern regions. So just some general facts. We have songs for every occasion. Weddings, baptisms, Christmas carols, New Year's songs, as I've mentioned already, spring songs. Kupalo is it's a pagan holiday in the summer that was resurrected as a way for identity, even before the pre-Soviet oppression. And then it became popular again in the 90s and 80s in Ukraine to reconnect with one's own ethnic identity. We know in the diaspora, it was very popular, still is, at Ukrainian scout camps. It's a way for the young scouts, mostly teens, to participate in a ethnic tradition that isn't necessarily family centered, but there are many songs they can learn. So it was used as a vehicle to connect children like myself of a first generation, second generation, and as they losing their Ukrainian or as strong to be in Ukrainian, they can learn these songs and participate in these traditions. I don't think anybody takes it as seriously, but they do take it as a game. Harvest songs are very popular, and for funerals, we do have keening. I do have an example to show of the keening. And then, of course, we have the dumas or ballads of the Kobzar tradition, and those were developed and still are to convey history. One could compare this to the West African griot, who would travel from village to village, same with the Kobzar, and teach everybody the history along with moral teachings. All right, so a little bit of a break from a quick overview, and I have some examples. My first one is the ever famous Nina Matvienko, who may she rest in peace. She brought alive and to the forefront on a more professional level, female Ukrainian singing, brought it out of the village onto the stage. I had the opportunity, the blessing to see her over 20 years ago when she came to the United States for a concert tour. And all of her concerts, not only with the singing and this beautiful Ukrainian female solo singing, in addition to she told the stories and the background and the history and the cultural lessons. So she truly was a keeper of our culture, of our art. She learned all of her songs from her mother, who learned them from her mother. So she truly was both in the sense of a traditional artist, and then she one could say elevated it to a concert stage. This is an example of her singing the song Letila Zuzula. It is about a young girl that sees that a cuckoo bird has come and landed on a tree near her home and is singing sadly, and she took it as, yes, you know that I am grieving as my mother has just passed away. There are a lot of sad themes in Ukrainian repertoire, musical repertoire. Probably, if we think about our history, that makes sense. And at the same time, it seems to be something that invokes the most comfort for us, even though it's sadness. But let's have a listen a little bit to Nina Matvienko. So you can hear, this isn't that chest voice loudness and screaming. It's more delicate. And she did bring that to the forefront as well, that we don't only, as females, sing through our chest voice all the time. That is more for multi-part singing as well, which we'll hear in a moment. And this is more delicate. And you'll hear the bending of the pitches, which is an influence from both the South and the East, not of Ukraine. And here she is. This is her group Zoloty Kluchi, Golden Keys, of a female trio. And their song is also a loss of love. That is, and that a young lady was made to marry a Chornomorich, a seaman from the Black Sea, instead of the love she truly had for some other boy. Very typical kind of theme in female singing. Why did I have to marry him? Also, other themes that would come up. Young girls singing, okay, I got married, but I miss my family, but my mother told me not to come back. So a lot of thematic songs on that. Chornomorets Machinko, Chornomorets, Also, you heard a very typical example of performance practice, that a single voice starts off the verse, and then the other two voices or other multi-part voices join in for the rest of the verse for the harmonies. And that is a standard performance practice in singing. And here we'll hear it with a male voice, male lead with female harmonies. This is a group from Kyiv, Drevo. There are other groups named Drevo. I think I fell upon there's a pop group named Drevo. This is a Drevo Kyiv, they call themselves. They specialize in finding older songs, more traditional songs. They focus on traditional singing and singing and performance practices styles. And you'll hear a lot of the chest voice and the bending of the notes. So even if you don't understand the words, you can tell from the musical form where the beginning of the verse is and where the end of the verse is, with the dropping of the sound of the voice, of the tone. This particular song, also a very common theme, not about unrequited love or being forced to marry, but about the Cossacks. These are our warriors of the steppes returning home from a campaign. So this would be something that villagers would be singing and welcoming them back and happy that they made it back. I know it doesn't sound in a happy mode, but they are proud of them, and also there's much pride for their efforts. And then another quick example here of vocal. Oops, pardon me. Nope. Keening. So keening is holosinia. I was trying to find a better, well, I'll explain in a second. Keening is funeral, not funeral singing, but at the grave singing. After the funeral has been taken place in the church, and then the coffin and the body has been laid at the cemetery, then on the side, usually there were women that would come as a group and sing the sorrows. They knew something about it. One could even say eulogized the deceased, so that the family could really grieve and get through those feelings of catharsis. And somebody else was taking it on, the singing, so that they could cry. However, as I was searching for, hopefully, a video, it became that they were showing actual relatives grieving over graves already, maybe after a year or two, they went to visit the cemetery. And the relative themselves are singing and eulogizing. And then it's a certain style that you'll hear in a second. And it's female. It is reserved to females usually. And I didn't feel comfortable showing those examples because for me, it was watching somebody actually grieving. So this is a recording, I believe from the 80s, of an example of keening for somebody's brother.
Ой, братику мій, а куда ж ти ся забираєш, а на кого ж ти нас лишаєш? Ой, братику мій, а в нас же більше родини нема, лиш ти був єден. Ой, братику мій, а яка ж я вже безрідна лишилася, що ти лиш єден був, та й нема вже тебе. Ой, братику мій.
So she repeats, "Oh brother of mine, oh brother of mine." I do not know if the female is singing, she's talking about her own brother, or she's acting in place of, as a voice for the grieving sister. And that is the typical sound of it. Very simple melody and to repeat. So it's a recitative style, meaning very syllabic and a lot of words to be said. So again, it's a eulogizing, and it's to help the family members. And maybe somebody wouldn't put that more in a music category, but it does go to show a little bit how music is not only a form of entertainment for Ukrainian culture, which it often is for many cultures. I'm not saying exclusively to Ukraine, but this is an example how music very much is used in daily and yearly lives and things that happen, not just for sitting and a song to make me feel either joyful or remembrance or whatever. It plays a huge part in everything. Many Ukrainians will say that we're the most spivuchi narod, we sing the most. As an ethnomusicologist, I'm very clear on the fact that that is true globally of all cultures. So, but just the fact that Ukrainians feel that way and say that and express it, it shows how much singing is a part of It's not something that, oh, somebody over there with great talent does as a profession. It's something we all should be doing, just like we speak Ukrainian and participate in Ukrainian Christmas Eve food or some other types of knowing how to cook. We all, or our arts and crafts, we should also know how all to sing. So that is my point of that. I'm going to skip that slide for now. I think I will call out my youngest, not yet, to sing with me, but I want to go through some more slides first in the interest of time. This is very briefly a video of Carpathian singing. You'll hear a little less harmonies, a little less interesting melodies, especially compared to, if you think about the first vocalist that Nina Matvienko. The Hutsuls, these are the regional group up in the mountains. I studied them as they preserve their culture in the United States. But this is an example from the Carpathians themselves. So this is in the southwestern Ukraine. In the mountains, these are our, maybe you could even think of it, well, doesn't matter. So here you'll hear them. They start off with horns that bring in the sound, these folk horns, and then they're singing a theophany song. So theophany, some might call it epiphany. This is the celebration of Christ's baptism in the River Jordan. Okay, so if you wanted to just sing la la la, you could easily follow along with them if you were standing there. La 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 la. Very simple tunes for singing. You could hear a little bit of the instruments in the background. In the mountains, you will rarely sing a cappella. The instruments, especially among the Hutsuls, are the shining stars. And the dancing, as we'll see in a moment. So this is an example of a little bit simpler verses in the steppes of Ukraine, central Ukraine. The melodies are richer, there's more melismas, there's more bending of notes, just a slightly different influence. Also in the mountains, you do have some call them ethnic groups. If you talk to a Hutsul, they will tell you they are Ukrainian. I talked to Hutsulit, they are Ukrainian, but they're also Hutsuls. It's, I guess, like saying you're a New Yorker, but you're an American. Boyki as well that I ran into will have the same thing. They're another regional group in the mountains, similar style of ideas there. Also, you will hear a little more of the Balkan influences in their music, so of rhythmic changes that are more syncopated. And then you have the lamkos, and that I don't want to touch too much. I've met lamkos that say they're absolutely Ukrainian, and then I've met lamkos that say, no, we are a separate ethnicity. Now they call themselves Rush, which is, we know, the ancient name for Ukraine. They do say they are separate. I can understand a Hutsul talking to me with their regional dialect. I can understand a Boyko. I'll be honest, it's harder for me to understand a Lemko. To say it's still getting, if it'll ever get sorted out, be it ethnically, politically, so on and so forth, I'm not here to judge or say. I'm just saying that's what it is. And then here we'll have a little bit of a Lemko song, Oi vershe mi vershe, singing Longing for Homeland.
Oi vershe mi vershe, Zeleny wersze, już mi tak nie bude, już mi перше. Уж мій так не буде, уж мій так не буде, як мій було перше.
So what's interesting there is the Lamko singing is much more complex and a little more similar to our singers to the east and to the steppes. Now Lamke were moved around a bit during various occupations, during the Polish occupation of Ukraine, and moved more east into, I'm sorry, did I say east or west? I meant to say east. More east into Ukraine, into Ivano-Frankivsk, into Ternopilshina, even before they were managed to return, they returned themselves back to west of the mountains, Zakarpattia. So perhaps the musical influence there, I think Oyvershemi Vershis, a little younger, but later you'll hear there's a very important Lemko song that actually is very much identified by all Ukrainians and very much used in most recent happenings of Ukraine. But I'll talk about that later. Here's a Boyko Kolomeka. There's also Hutzul Kolomeka, Boyko Kolomeka. It's a kolo is a round dance, so like the kolo dances of the Balkans. So here we have a little bit of that similarity that is not as prevalent in further east in Ukraine, even in Lviv, not as prevalent. This is fairly localized to the Carpathian region, this kind of sound.
Щоби було добрим людям танцювати, щоби було добрим людям танцювати. Ой, легонька, половинка, легонька, легонька, через тую колонію волить головонька.
So you can hear a little bit if you're familiar at all with any Bulgarian or Balkan music. There's a little more similarity there than the longer drawn out melodies that we heard earlier. A few photos of some. Now I'm going to go into instrumental music of Ukraine. Okay, this one you should all recognize, the bandura. The national instrument of Ukraine, even though it is actually very much from Central. That's where basically it hails. But everybody recognizes it, and everybody, as far as Ukrainians are concerned. Down here, we have the Ukrainian alpenhorn, the trembita. That is a Hutzul instrument. It is used mostly for communication across the mountains from village to village, but there are some even musical compositions, shall we say, written for it. There is the Ukrainian version of our bagpipes. That's called a duda. Then we have the hammer dulcimer, cymbale, not to be confused with the cymbalum. That's something else. This is cymbale or hammer dulcimer. I don't think I did a video of this one, but that is a drimba or a jazz harp. And I did have to include, not my favorite, the accordion. As we all know, throughout the world, as it gets harder to get these handmade instruments that are complex, or the time is running out, modern industrialization, things get pushed out traditionally. And let's face it, the accordion, which also then later got a little bit pushed out by good old keyboards and synthesizers. Is it progress? Maybe. One can argue. Personally, I prefer hearing Ukrainian music without it, but I understand why it's compact. It takes the place of maybe 3 musicians and you just need one, and it fills things up. Growing up, the majority of Ukrainian dance troupes in the diaspora basically had a singular accordion player to accompany the dance, so that the people could, the dancers would have something to dance to, not necessarily recorded music, but live music, and that was considered. And on the one hand, I would have preferred to hear an actual Ukrainian instruments, but we have to think practically. I don't want to get too heavily into the bandura. as I think you did have a presentation on the bandura, but I would be, I think I'd lose my Ukrainian identity card if I didn't bring it up. I do have a small child. I like that chuckle. Thank you. Also, after I finish presenting, I do have a small child's bandura. Mine is not tuned. As my talents on piano are not very, I am myself a flutist, and the bandura and I, we didn't quite get along. I did try to take lessons as a child. Maybe someday I can still learn. Here we have 3 different types that I'm showing. The classical bandura. That's the oldest type from the 14th, 15th century. Then we have here in the middle a picture of Hnatkevich with a Poltavka or Kharkivska. And then here we have a Kievska or Cherniivka. There are still other variations on the bandura, especially the concert ones. There's different playing styles. I could have a whole separate several session podcasts on the history. Here is just a little bit of very traditional singing by a very good friend of mine, Dr. Markofarian, who actually is a dentist, but not that I've ever been in his dental chair, but I can say he is a phenomenally gifted bandurist, a phenomenally gifted singer. He's also a trained opera singer, and he has sung in the Detroit Opera. So this is Pro Pochayevsku Božu Mater. This is a ballad about the Virgin Mary appearing to Kozake, and then how the story was told. Oh, pardon me. There we go. And I've realized as I'm translating in my head, I think I misspoke. So it is a religious canticle, to say it correctly. I did write it down for myself and I forgot to look down. And I was right. It is about the miracle when the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to the Pochayev monastery after the Turks and the Tatars laid siege and returned all the bullets shot at the monks to save them all. It is believed that the icon there has healed believers ever since. And I don't have, sadly, a video of Marko playing, but he did post this very well-known painting of Kozak Mamai, so it's a legendary figure. And he is not holding a bandura, but a kobza. The kobza is to be thought to be the parent of the bandura. There aren't written or any kind of actual evidence. This all comes from theoretical connections. We do not know exactly how it was tuned or played. We suspect, and it has been recreated, and people have tried to go through just historically reconstructing back, and there are musicians and scholars. I did not include any examples here, but I just wanted to say what the kobza was. This is just to briefly show, this is Victor Mishailo singing a Duma about the Holodomor of 1933. And I mostly included this video so you could, he's a fantastic Ukrainian-Canadian bandurist, has been promoting and preserving the culture of a kobzar, and I just wanted to show the playing style, so very briefly.
There is no sound.
Did you say there's no sound?
I heard no sound.
Yeah,
Whoa.
no sound. No sound here either.
And you had the previous sound?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to skip this one, but at least you could see visually the playing style. I don't know. Hopefully this will work. It's the same kind of link. If it doesn't, we'll just continue on. It's okay. I won't even play on this one. This is just Markov back in the 1990s. He visited Ukraine several times, and it's just to show the different. As you can see, his left hand is up. This is not Markov. This is Oleksiy Chuprina. He's a historical kobzar. I mean, he has since passed. He passed, I believe, in 1993. He was the official kobzar in Kanyv, so that is the Shevchenko Museum, and you can see the different style performance practice of the playing practice of that he's using. The right hand hitting the treble notes and his left hand hitting the bass notes versus what Victor was doing in the previous. But I will continue on. I'm going to skip a few. And I want to talk about, because I think you've had a little bit about Bandura on previous podcasts. I want to skip to Troiste Muzyki. So Troiste Muzyka, music of the Carpathian Mountains, mostly of the Hutsuls. Troista, which means threefold. And it doesn't mean just three instruments. It means three parts: melody, harmony, and bass. And any instrument could possibly do it. Your standards would be the violin or fiddle. It is not different in structure from the Western violin. Would be playing the melody. The cymbale would be adding on to the harmony. The sopilka, the end-blown flute, or the dansivka, also could be doing harmony or melody. And then here we have this. It's actually a bass-looking structure. Somebody would be thinking it looks more like a banjo, but it's not. It's called a kozobas. The head of the piece is in the shape of a goat, which koza. So koza, and then it plays bass notes, bas. So it adds the bass and also the rhythm sound. But those are just some of the instruments used. And here we have, hopefully the video works and sound works. Fingers crossed. If not, I can try to go into another place. These are Troiste Muzyki in Hucushna in the Carpathian Mountains. These are not the ones I meant. Like I said, from my dissertation, my field work, I have not managed to digitize my videos, but this is very similar, exactly similar to what I got to experience.
We heard the first couple of notes, but we're not hearing anything else.
Oh, I have no idea why. So you heard a few things and then it dropped out.
Correct.
We heard almost like a call to music. We heard a male voice, I think, just kind of encourage people to start, but we didn't. I don't think we heard any musical instrument. I think it cut out before we heard musical instruments.
Let me see if
the visuals are great.
It sounds great, and I can hear everything. So this is why I am.
This happens sometimes with us. There's for Teams, when you share, there's also a share audio slide, which when you first put it on, it sometimes disconnects the second time, like when you play something else. So it might be worth checking that. Share with audio.
I will look. I lost my slides.
Well, while you're looking, like I take your
Sure.
time and look. I think like in 12 years of Ukrainian Saturday school, which I learned a lot from, I've learned so much more and so far in your presentation, which is just absolutely lovely. It makes me appreciate this part of our culture, this part of our ethnicity, this part of our upbringing. Or maybe it's because I'm older and I'm more attentive now. Maybe we did learn this stuff, but I really don't think so. So as you look for your video, I just want to tell you how grateful I am. And at the end of your presentation, I definitely have questions and comments and things to kind of relate to.
Oh, that makes me very happy. Oh, it did untoggle.
Yeah, it does that sometimes. We've had this. It's happened to me when I present here. So.
All right, let's see if I can get it back. Sorry about my messy. Ah, wrong one. This is the one I want. Pardon my mess. I have my screen often. Okay, what am I on? 27. Oh, all right, let me know.
Веселої, хлопці!
Success!
Okay, I want to make sure I get to my other slides because there's some cool stuff. I think I'll skip just so we can get to the other slides. You can imagine what a bagpipe sounds like. Very similar melody, what we just heard. They know all of them and they're different. And it's like the Indian ragas. They're very familiar and they know exactly what they are and for what. But sometimes when you're listening to all of them at once, they all sound the same.
I would love to. I'm just dying out of curiosity.
Okay, you got to hear it.
Bagpipe, and that is a goat's head on top of that. So
that is a goat's head on top of this one. I don't think he has one, but let's listen.
Wow.
And you can hear the winds from the mountains too. And then here, a lira, which was also a soloist's instrument, like the bandura. There was a lirnik. A lirnik also, if you know a little bit about kobzari and kobzars, they were the ones that often these were blind minstrels because they could not fight. How could they help the nation? And how would they help the nation? By traveling village to village, usually with a young boy companion to help him travel that could see, so a sighted person. And both the bandures, the kobzar, and the lirnek, they had their instruments of choice and they had their own repertoire, but they basically acted like our modern day CNN or news source or newspaper, and also moral teachings. So they were also the church bulletin. All of this information so they served a very important social purpose, not only entertainment. So this is what it's known as a hurdy-gurdy, and they are known throughout Europe. And this is what a Ukrainian one sounds like. And then we'd be amiss if not have a little bit of trombita, that Ukrainian alpenhorn. And yes, certain snippets of the tunes were meant for different calls, and there could be either a announcement of a wedding, of a couple just getting married. It could be for warning the next village over for danger. These alpenhorns are they're wrapped. I forgot. So lathes wood put together and then wrapped in leather. So that's leather wrapping on top. Modern times, I don't think these gentlemen are using it. Some have found like brass mouthpieces to be able to get it, but usually it's done they carve it out themselves. And it is in a similar sense a technique of a bugle. So overtones and controlling the sound strictly with the lips. So that's the trombita. I'm going to skip a little of the choral singing. I mean, this was my Western art, but I'm going to skip over. There's something I want to make a connection to. Skip the dance music for now. So obviously, ethnopop is a thing. Global music does this all the time. They take the traditional music and give it something as simple as a boomchik underneath. Ukrainians have been doing it for quite a while. We've had this is Trio Maranici. They took folk songs but had a guitar, which is not a Ukrainian instrument, and sang beautifully. And also the harmonia, which you blow into and play. So they used modern Western instruments and sang Ukrainian folk songs. They also did their own take on it. And what I'm skipping to, which I can go back and give examples for those that want to hear, how the traditional music made its way into what we call estradna or pop. So Maranici, it was more on the nose, one might say, with just a little bit of accompaniment of modern. And then there was Volodymyr Ivasyuk, one of my personal favorites as far as modern Ukrainian or pop music or estradna would be concerned, which even some people, when they hear his music, they'll call it folk music. He was highly influenced by traditional music, but these are his own original compositions, and he was murdered not because he was a strong political nationalist, which he did in his heart believe in a free Ukraine from the Soviet regime, but his actions, his public actions, were songs written about love and written in Ukrainian. That was his crime, I say in quotes. And that's what he was murdered for. This is a very highly familiar to many, but for those that are not, one of the original recordings of his piece, Chervona Ruta, which is based on a Hutzul myth. And it is influenced of tunes he heard of the Carpathian Mountains.
Ти признайся мені, звідки в тебе ті чари, я без тебе всі дні у полоні печалі.
So a very 70s sound, but it was very much influenced. I'm going to skip over as it's progressed into a more modern sound, but there's a reason I'm making this connection. Skip forward to Eurovision 2004. Only the second time that Ukraine participated in this, mostly European, but they have expanded, any countries can actually join, musical competition that a country presents a song, they put up a song, and it's the Grammys outside of the United States. It's quite a unique competition, and it's very fun to watch. And in comes Ruslana on the scene, who was also highly influenced by the music of the Carpathian Mountains. And this was the song that gave Ukraine its first Eurovision win. And it's called Diki Tanchi, or Wild Dances. I won't play the whole thing, but a little snippet. what's interesting about this mashup of Ukrainian culture, in the beginning, you can obviously hear a trimbita, and even shows a trimbita. You're hearing some, they're playing on timpanis, but drumming sounds, but it's being played by a man who looks like a Cossack. They come out in outfits that are more kind of a nod to perhaps Scythian tribes, which are not genetically connected to us, but warriors. So it's all of this. And what was very interesting about this song is it was immediately a positive response by Ukrainians, and it spoke to everybody's soul. Like, oh yeah, this is us. Even though if you sit down and take a more of objective scholarly look at it, it's like, wow, that's a lot of our regional stuff all put into one. And yet there it is. And the reason I wanted to make sure to this, if you, now we zip forward, I know I have some fun things on here, to 2022. And here we have a group that's mostly hip hop rap, is that would be their genre, but they're Ukrainian hip hop rap. They call themselves Kalus Orchestra, which is right outside the Carpathian region. And he's holding, you can see, dentsivka, that is an end-blown flute. It doesn't have a fipple, that's what a dentsivka is, and he does play it. And it very much has the same influence of the Carpathian Mountains. So it seems that the Carpathian sound, the more simpler melodies, the more ancient ones, even though very much the repertoire of the Kobzar, the repertoire, as we heard from Nina Matvienko, is still very much alive, very much known. But really the Carpathian one is kind of that sound, that style has really found its home in the more modern interpretation. So this is the 2022 Eurovision winner. Skip forward. So there's that example of the dentsivka being used in a very modern sense and still very much identifiable as traditional. And that's what I find very interesting of the where Ukrainian music is headed. And it does live comfortably, very much so, the traditional, the progressive, the artistic, if I had other time to show, but it all lives very much together. Happily at the same time, very often artists even crossing over very comfortably. And I know I am way over time, so I will leave it at that. I'm trying to stop sharing so I can leave time for questions, and there it is.
Thank you, Darka, very much for a wonderful presentation, and I'm sure we have questions. This was remarkable roller coaster.
There's a lot to, yes.
I'm sure you have much more. Please, comments and questions and comments, please.
Well, my first question is, can you come back and do part 2 and show the stuff you didn't show? I really, you definitely have the heart of a teacher. I'm very grateful for this like tour de force of Ukrainian music. And again, to me, I think our childhood experiences are quite similar, and I've lived some of this music, but this is the first time I'm hearing it kind of explained in an organized manner. Beautifully done, and thank you so much. I have the traditional folk songs in Scouts. We would sit around a campfire called a vatra, and this is the entertainment, which you just sang. You just sang, and there would be like a podruha, someone who, like one of the scout leaders, who would be standing. Usually you get somebody play guitar, and we would like shout out the next song we wanted to sing. And among those songs was Chervona Ruta was one. The other one that you had Huntington and so it's really it's kind of quite beautiful how the scholarly material of your presentation has been embedded in our childhoods thanks to the perseverance of our parents and grandparents who wanted to instill this culture in us. And we talk a lot about ethnic identity, national identity, cultural identity on this program. And what a wonderful world you've opened up for us. The dimension of music and how powerful that is. And to this day, I bet you and I probably, so I can't sing, I have zero voice. But the nice thing about Ukrainian music is you actually, for some of it, it's okay. But I bet you and I know the same songs. I bet you and I could probably list 50 songs we know in common just by virtue of our upbringing. And so from that folk and the traditional thing, I've got tons of notes of what you were presenting. From the traditional point, thank you for like capturing such an important part of the story that we in these horrible times don't pay attention to or forget. And so I'm going to transition to the cathartic experience. You mentioned the example of keening. I've seen this, I just didn't understand what I was seeing. So this example of keening, the singing by the grave, typically reserved for women, this idea of catharsis, helping the community process grief. The example you played reminded me a little bit of the liturgical chants on Good Friday. And so there's a crossover between like the personal grieving. That was quite amazing, putting the two together. Thank you. There's so much I have to thank you for. Thank you. The wider appreciation of music as part of national identity. And I love the comparisons to the Balkans, to West African traditions, to Indian practices. And it is something so beautifully human that there's some part of us that responds to music that we can't really access in any other way. And it's not dependent on our talent. It's just dependent on our ability to receive it. So I just wanted to start the commentary with just a huge thank you. One of the things that growing up in the diaspora, we would hear is that they destroy our culture there, we build it here. And what's so nice now is seeing not only did that happen, we built it here, but also they are reclaiming it. And that is beautiful. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was lovely.
To add to that, which I was going to touch on and maybe get in trouble for, but I'm going to say it anyway. So as we know, socialist realism and Soviet practices very much wanted to control. They wanted to let us perform or let us have it, but in a controlled environment. Hence, the existence of the capella, which is the bandura's chorus, because that is not in the tradition of the bandura. Bandura is a solo instrument. But how do you control a bunch of soloists singing their own improvisations and ideas and political commentary? I know how you control them. You put them in a group and they have to decide previous to performance, well, what words are we singing? What are we saying? And then it gets approved, and that's what you sing, and you all have to sing the same, or else it's going to be a cacophony. And that's how they control it. Now, it's not to say that we need to throw away all of that came out of it, because it did help preserve. It was a vehicle to get back to where it should be. And I think it's still a beautiful art form as well. Same with our dancing, which I didn't get to that part. Our dances really are more individual. They're not like Balkan. That's what you'll see in the mountains. You'll see the more group, circular. But in the steppes, it is singular solo or couple. A couple doing their thing and a couple doing their thing. Not a whole group that we see now. Again, that was we even see that with Chinese culture, like Shenyun, if you ever see their advertisements at malls and things like that, which they're lovely people, but that came out of the communist control of socialist realism, that if we present culture, we have to make sure that we clean it up and only what we feel should be presented will be presented. What they didn't realize doing that, it kind of helped preserve a little bit. So when we finally got our freedom, and we're able to do it, because things are being preserved underground, of course. We could say, wait a minute, you know that song you heard that whole group was singing? Well, the actual version, and we could go there. So I'm not saying it was done on purpose to control us, and joke's on them. It helped us preserve us. So we could look at it that way.
Wow, yeah. One of my colleague Anara, who's on one of the co-hosts, often talks about soft power, and I can see where, and I don't fully understand this concept. I'm still learning, but the idea of music as soft. I mean, it's not just I'm saying soft power. I guess it's who you are. You can't be anything other than who you are. At some point, it is gonna bubble up. It's gonna come out, and I just so I guess I'm acknowledging the power in that. But anyway. Huge thank you. Huge thank you. Beautifully done.
And I have to say that connecting that, if we go back to that Ruslana song, that was very much, very much Carpathian, very much Hutzul, because of those mass regional Ukrainian groups created by the Soviets and presenting, and now here and here, and see, we're all one, you know, very similar also to the Pan-African things that were done. Because of that Ukrainian in Donbass, when they heard the Ruslana song, they're like, wait a minute, that's my people. So they unknowingly united us.
Yeah. Wow.
And then they really united us by bombing us, but which I have heard Easterners say that they're not happy that we've been invaded, but boy, did it bring everybody together. But if you want me to come back for the rest of the slides, I'm happy to do it.
Part 2.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we have a few moments for additional comments or questions, please, if somebody has them. If not, I will thank Darka again for her kindly sharing with us this remarkable cultural journey. And I need.
Oh, I lost.
Years ago, when I first heard Chervona Ruta back in the Soviet Union, I think composer was still with us at this point.
He was murdered in 1979.
Yes.
I remember it as a child. I remember getting the news because we were singing his songs already. And
I didn't know this name. I didn't know this name, but we have heard it as students on our recorded reels. You remember the old magnetophones they had?
On Melodia Records.
Yes. Melodia Records, magnetic reels, and Chervona Ruta was probably the most popular and beautiful at this time.
Fun fact, he was 19 when he composed it.
You're talking about Volodymyr Ivashchuk, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Ivashchuk, yes.
I also remember when he was murdered, and that, 19-year-old kid. Or 19, well, when he wrote.
Well, he was 19 when he wrote Chervona Ruta.
Right.
He was a little older, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. But
I can't remember the age, but yeah, I was younger. I was 11, and I loved his music. It was like something, because it spoke because it married both the new and the old, and it was exactly what we needed. And yes, we were singing all of his songs. WWII, Chervona Ruta, Pisnia bude pomij nas. I mean, we had all of it.
yeah,
and Ruslana is that for us. So.
Yes, and Ruslana is that for my daughter's generation, and Carlos, for which I was lucky enough to see live. They, after their winning, they came to the DC, and what a show! And it all very much connects. If you'd like, we can wrap it up with some live music.
Should I do the final greeting, Victor, before or after we lay off?
Sure.
Before? Okay. All right.
Before is fine.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні.
Героям слава. All right, even though this is backwards, this is a song greeting guests, and I have a guest artist with me who harmonizes beautifully, my youngest, Nina. Зелене є жито зелене, хороші гості у мене. Зелене є жито при межі, хороші гості від душі. Зелене є жито при межі, хороші гості від душі. Зелене є жито зелене, хороші гості у мене. Зелене є жито жеці жнуть, хороші гості в хату йдуть. Зелене є жито жеці жнуть, хороші гості в хату йдуть.
Браво! Дякую.
Proszę дуже. That was a song about hosty. So thank you. We welcome you to my home. And it should have been in the beginning, but that's okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who is with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Oh, dang.